Hello, and welcome to Region Locked. Previously on this show, we've mentioned the Super Nintendo add-on, the Satellaview. The device was released exclusively in Japan in 1995 and allowed users to connect to a digital satellite and stream data to their console. This worked in a similar fashion to the internet services commonly seen today, allowing players to read magazines, add additional content to existing games, and even download new games to a memory pack. These streams would have a designated time of broadcast and cutoff time. The Satellaview's games were also usually prefixed with the letters BS, an abbreviation of the term Broadcast Satellaview. Today, we'll be exploring a number of games from the Zelda series that were broadcast to the system. These titles were never re-released, and as a result are only playable thanks to a dedicated fan community. We'll start with a look at BS The Legend of Zelda. BS Zelda is a fully fledged remake of the original Legend of Zelda, published on the NES in 1986. With BS Zelda being on the Super Nintendo, the game's graphics were recreated within 16-bit limitations. The title plays in the same fashion as the game's original release, with a few changes, both minor and major. A few examples are that the Super Nintendo's L and R buttons allow the player to switch between items on the fly, and the maximum number of rupees is increased from 255 to 999. Alterations were also made to the game's map, reducing the game's overworld as well as completely changing the layouts of the dungeons. These changes have caused many fans to refer to the title as a third quest for The Legend of Zelda, as the original had a second quest that was unlocked after beating the game. A feature that couldn't be done without the Satellaview was the game's use of the sound link system, allowing a narrator to provide hints and tips at certain points of the live stream. This narrator is alleged to be the old man from the start of the game. Two versions of BS Zelda were broadcast. Between August 9th and August 30th, 1995, the version known as Third Quest was streamed to the console. However, in December of 1996, a version featuring a different world was broadcast. This is often referred to as the Map 2 version of the game, or the Fourth Quest. Because the game was streamed to players, it had to be played in real time. As a result, events would occur at certain points during a broadcast, such as killing all enemies on screen or giving the player an unlimited quantity of items. The game was streamed in 4 weekly installments, and players had to tune in at those times if they wanted to play. As you've likely noticed, another feature of the broadcast is that the player is actually not taking control of Link. Instead, the title makes use of the Satellaview's mascots. These are a red-headed girl and a boy with a baseball cap. The player's name and gender were determined by the user's settings on the BSX hardware and loaded into the game. This is the first time a Nintendo-developed Zelda game would feature a female protagonist. Prior to this release, the only Zelda games to have a playable female character were the CDI titles by Philips. This playable character is known as the Hero of Light, a character that would be explored more in the next game we'll be looking at, BS The Legend of Zelda Ancient Stone Tablets. Broadcast in 1997, BS The Legend of Zelda Ancient Stone Tablets made use of the Super Nintendo's Link to the Past engine, once again putting the player in the shoes of the Hero of Light. A number of changes were made to the game's mechanics, such as being able to change direction while using the Pegasus boots. This change was possibly inspired by the ability to change direction while running in Marvelous, another treasure island by E.G. Enuma. The title is often seen as a sort of second quest for A Link to the Past, as many elements from the original game are reused and rearranged to create an original release. The only difference to most standard second quests within the Zelda series is that Ancient Stone Tablets actually features its own unique storyline. The game's story takes place 6 years after Link defeated Ganon in A Link to the Past. While the kingdom is at peace, Princess Zelda has a reoccurring dream of a shadow over a temple, when a mysterious light appears in the east of Hyrule. Both Zelda and Sahasrara's younger brother Agana go to investigate. They find a young child lying on the ground, and take the youth to Sahasrara's hideout near the Eastern Palace, where Agana now resides. Because of the young hero's clothing, they believe that the child may not be from Hyrule at all. Zelda learns that Sahasrara has left the land to seek out Link, who left after defeating Ganon years before. Sensing courage within the child, Zelda believes that they could be the Hero of Light. We won't go too in-depth with the game's plot for those that wish to play the game for themselves. The hero sets forth on a quest to retrieve ancient stone tablets in order to learn more on the impending evil. At the start of the game, the player has no weapon. Instead, prior to obtaining a sword and shield from the Eastern Palace, a golden bee in a bottle can be used to protect the player. When let loose, the bee will attack any monsters the hero encounters, but will run from those who wield the blade. Also given to the player is a bug-catching net and an ocarina, which can be used to return to the entrance of a dungeon. The game is set up over a timeline of 4 real-world weeks. Each week, an hour-long broadcast would be made, similar to that of a serialized story. Each week, the player would have a total of around 50 minutes to complete 2 dungeons, as well as explore Hyrule in search of secrets and bonuses. After the time limit is over, the player's progress would be saved regardless of their position in the game. Progress would be carried over to each session, and players would keep any obtained tablets, items, and rupees. Rather than allow players to complete unfinished dungeons from the previous week, a thief stands at the entrance of the dungeon and would supply the hero with any treasures they found within the dungeon. The narrator from BS Zelda makes a return in the game, but Agana and Princess Zelda will also speak to the player through telepathy. Their dialogue comes in the form of voice acting and informs the player as well as advances the game's plot. The game also has timed events, which can change the weather to rain or fog and introduce Zora enemies, as well as give players temporary powers. Some timed story events can also occur, such as the player having to save Zelda from Octoroks, or helping the Sanctuary Sage from drowning in a lake. The game was only ever broadcast twice, and was impossible to boot the title outside of the designated broadcast time, resulting in it being impossible to play without emulation. Because the narration was broadcast to the player live and not stored locally, it's impossible to emulate the game's voice acting and orchestral soundtrack without the original audio. While not considered part of the Zelda canon, Ancient Stone Tablets is the first time in which Zelda is shown to predicting future events through her dreams. It also marks the first time in which Zelda's voice was ever heard. The game's plot also takes place 6 years after the events of A Link to the Past, the same period of time between the release of both games in Japan. Ancient Stone Tablets also marked the first time in which non-playable characters would move around the world and change behavior depending on the game's time, a feature used extensively in Majora's Mask. The term Hero of Light would also be featured in Four Swords Adventures, and is given to whoever is deemed most helpful during the multiplayer mode of Hyrulean Adventure. The BS Zelda titles are both impossible to play without the use of emulation. ROM files of the games can be found on the BS Zelda homepage, which was created in 1999 and is still maintained by Khan. The site archives all releases of the games, as well as all patches that are available for the titles. These patches can range from changing sprites to be linked during gameplay, to attempting to recreate the full original broadcast quality of the titles. Of course, these games never saw release outside of Japan, and were only available for a very limited time. In 1999, Nintendo broke its partnership with broadcaster Saint Giga, who controlled the service. And due to a dispute with the radio station, the service was officially terminated in 2000. The Satellaview, or some variant of it, may have been considered for the international market at some point. Regional variations of the Super Nintendo all had expansion ports used by the Satellaview on their underside, making it possible to utilize a similar device. However, there were no equivalent services to Saint Giga that operated outside of Japan. This would have made it difficult to get a similar device working in the West. Audio or radio dramas are also extremely popular in Japan, meaning the streams were tailored for a Japanese audience. In fact, many games have audio drama adaptations. Along with the cultural differences, the need to find voice actors for English releases would have been costly, making the investment of localizing the games an even bigger risk. Earlier, we mentioned Marvelous, Another Treasure Island, the first game directed by Zelda director Eiji Aonuma. You should check out our video on that too. Daz and Greg will be streaming some of the Ancient Stone Tablets on Wednesday, the 3rd of May. Hit that notify button on the stream page to be updated on when they're live. Why not subscribe to the channel to catch future streams? My name is Shadow Temple, and this has been Region Locked. If you want to hear more of me, check out my Twitch channel of the same name, where I stream nightly. You can find a link for it in the description below.